An illegal immigrant charged with homicide has been released and is out on the streets tonight because politicians in Denver have decided that keeping our country's borders open is a higher priority than protecting our citizens. Police say that Ivan Zamarripa Castaneda killed a truck driver in a hit and run. Federal law enforcement wanted him held in custody. But thanks to Denver's sanctuary city policies, authorities there refused. They did not hold him. They let him go. On Friday night, lawyer Paul Reyes came on this program and said that wasn't going to happen. The progressives in Denver were not trying to protect illegal immigrants at the expense of public safety. Watch this. Why wouldn't you, if you're the Denver Sheriff's Office, the second that call them and say, you know, this guy's leaving at this hour, be waiting for him? Why wouldn't they do that? What's the answer? They're not going to get sued for that.
Because as ICE itself has said, they are issuing on a daily basis, a weekly basis, between 35 and 40,000 of these detainers.
I'm not talking about 35. I'm talking about this guy, the guy charged with homicide. Why wouldn't they do it in this specific case? Will Denver do that? Why wouldn't they?
The reason they did not was because, again, ICE did not make him a priority by failing to get the warrant for it. Because they did not get the warrant, the local law enforcement did not take it seriously. The local law enforcement
now you're being
does need a warrant.
They're not doing it because they don't care. That's the truth, and you know it. Well, he was, of course, being disingenuous. ICE asked the Denver Sheriff's Office for notice if Zamarripa Castaneda was going to be released, but deputies in Denver refused. After he posted a $25,000 bond, Zamarripa Castaneda was released at about 5:30 p.m. on Saturday evening. ICE was not notified for more than an hour, and by that time, he was gone. Zamarripa Castaneda is now on the loose. He's an immigrant fugitive. So a person is dead, and all the Democratic Party can think of is how to protect his killer from deportation? That's normal on the left now. In Oakland, California, federal authorities wanted to arrest drug dealers, child molesters, and gang members, but Mayor Libby Schaaf warned them so they could get away before the feds showed up. The press howled that a woman called Perla Morales Luna had her arrest caught on camera. You've probably seen it online today. They suggested she'd been abducted from her family. Well, turns out she was wanted on human trafficking charges. That may not have made your Facebook feed. In Baltimore, meanwhile, one of the poorest cities in the country, officials cut city funding for streetlights and trash cans to plug a hole in the budget, and yet somehow the city found hundreds of thousands of dollars to pay lawyers to represent illegal aliens fighting federal law. In all cases, the message could not be clearer to the rest of us. Democrats are on the side of illegal aliens over hurting American citizens. They're not even pretending anymore. Jorge Ramos is a Univision anchor. He just wrote a book. It's called Stranger, The Challenge of a Latino Immigrant in the Trump Era. He joins us tonight. Jorge, thanks for coming on.
Tucker, great to be here again. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and congratulations on the book. And the book is partly about what American policies ought to be. We're talking about what America's policies ought to be on the show. And so in light of that, I want to ask you about a tweet that you just sent out, which I was amazed by. It was in Spanish, but here's what the tweet said. I got my voter credential to vote from the United States in the elections in Mexico on July 1st. Now I have to register and wait for my ballot by mail. It's an expensive and complicated process, but you have to do it. I thought you were an American.
I am Mexican and I am American. That's completely legal. And I wish I could give you an easier explanation on my identity, but that's exactly who I am. I was born in Mexico. I became a U.S. citizen, and that's why I have the chance to do that. And I feel very proud of being from Mexico and very proud from being from the United States. I see nothing wrong with that.
Okay, there's nothing wrong with being from Mexico. I agree with that completely. What's wrong is that when you became a citizen, you took this following oath. This was a pledge. And you said you swore absolutely and entirely to renounce all allegiance to any foreign state you have ever been a citizen of. You took that oath, but you're voting in a foreign election? How does that, why are you doing that?
I'm voting in Mexico, and I'm voting here in the United States, and there's absolutely nothing wrong. Some countries allow that, and that's precisely why I have a U.S. passport and I have a Mexican passport.
But there is something wrong.
And by the way, I'm not the only one, and I think I can participate fully in the U.S. electorally, and I can do exactly the same thing with Mexico. And the relationship between Mexicans and Mexican Americans is perfectly legal. So I see absolutely nothing wrong with that.
Okay, but I think a lot of our viewers may not know that you can vote in a foreign election because, again, and you had to show ID to do that.
Now they know. Now they know.
You had to show ID
And it's happening in Mexico, and it's happening in Europe, and it's happening with many countries, not only Mexico and the U.S. Last time I checked, Mexico is not invading the U.S., and we're not at war. That's the last time I checked.
You're not invading the United States, and yet Mexican citizens live in this country, vote in Mexican elections, and then write books telling Americans like me how we should run our government. When you clearly haven't renounced your loyalty to a foreign government, why should I take you seriously? With respect.
I happen to be also a U.S. citizen, and sometimes, and that's precisely the title of the book, sometimes I do feel like a stranger, because it seems, as you just pointed out, that for many Americans, I'm not American enough, and believe
you're voting
it or not,
in a foreign election. Wait, hold on. It's not about Mexico. It could be any country. But why should I take you seriously as an American if you are still tied to a country, despite the oath you took, apparently disingenuously, to renounce your ties to that country? You're weighing in a foreign election. In what sense are you fully American? Sincerely.
Okay, well, just because of my arguments, and just because I'm a U.S. citizen, just as you are. So now it seems that
I'm not voting in foreign elections.
So it seems that I cannot complain about Donald Trump being the most anti-immigrant president since the 1950s.
Of course, you can complain all you want. You can complain all you want.
Simply because I can vote here, and because I have
but I'm asking why I should take you seriously, and I'm just going to let our viewers decide their view on that. But let me ask you about the story that we just played. So here you have someone who has been charged by authorities with homicide and fleeing the scene of a homicide. And federal authorities say this guy's in the country illegally. Nobody disputes that. And the city of Denver decides to let him go on a very small bond. Why wouldn't they call the federal government? Why would they prevent the federal government from enforcing federal law?
Well, the way you presented this story is, I don't know why you want to become state media, Tucker, because you are criminalizing all immigrants. You're suggesting
state media. I'm not criminalizing anybody. I'm asking about this specific
what Donald Trump is doing.
Spare me your Univision talking points. I'm asking a real question.
Okay, this is the argument. The argument is that the vast majority of immigrants, and you've heard this argument, the vast majority of immigrants are not criminals and are not rapists.
I agree with that.
They're not, and they're less likely to be criminals and be behind bars.
That's not true.
Those are the facts. Okay,
no, that's not true. The second point is not true. But look, I agree. Most immigrants are great people. I'm not disputing that.
You cannot criminalize every immigrant all the time.
I'm not trying to criminalize anybody. I'm not a law enforcement officer. I'm just noting that this guy has been charged in our country with homicide. And the authorities in Denver, for political reasons, under pressure from people like you, have decided that they're not going to turn him over to the feds, and now he walks free. Why should I, as an American citizen, be happy about that? That's it. I'm not attacking all immigrants.
So the argument... So I wish I could have that influence. But so the argument is about sanctuary cities. That's what you complain, right? That's what you don't want. Well, I mean, I think sanctuary cities are doing a great job defending immigrants that nobody else wants to defend.
But why this guy? Why this guy? He's charged with homicide. People in Denver don't care about theoretical arguments about trumping mean to immigrants. They don't want a guy charged with homicide who's here illegally wandering the street.
I'm not here to defend criminals. I'm not here to defend criminals, but just to criminalize all the immigrant population simply because of one person would be like if I would criminalize all the white population simply because of what Stephen Paddock did in Las Vegas, killing 58.
Well, you're part of the white population, if I could just point out. You always pull that card on the white population. You're whiter than I am, Jorge. Knock that stuff off. I'm not, you know what?
It is completely unfair to criticize the whole population or a whole group simply because of one person.
Okay. Of course I agree with that. You should never attack people on the basis of things that other people did, of course. But I'm not talking about all people. I'm talking about this person who was protected by policies that you support and have advocated for, and the rest of us are suffering because of that. So why don't you tell me why it's a good idea to let this specific guy out of jail, Mr. Neck Tattoo, charged with homicide, and why should we be happy about that? They could have turned him over to the feds, and they didn't because of pressure from you.
Again, I'm not here defending any criminals, but I'm.
So will you say that this is a bad decision?
But I think sanctuary cities is a good idea. I think somebody has to defend immigrants. You know, I was listening to.
But who's going to defend the rest of us? Why should we be for this, American citizens?
Let me give you another argument. I've been listening to what's happening in Los Angeles. It's also sanctuary city, and the Los Angeles Police Chief Charlie Beck said the following: that the reports of sexual assault and domestic violence in the city Latinos residents has declined. Why? Because of fear. And then he said the following, which I think is very powerful. He said, imagine a young woman, imagine your daughter, your sister, your mother not reporting a sexual assault because they are afraid that their family will be torn apart.
Let me just say, he doesn't know that. Hold on. No, that's not a real statistic because
this is what
it's
could happen.
Purely, no, it's not. That's purely speculative. Yes. He's a political hack sucking up to his political masters. He can't know that. That's not social science.
Sexual assault dropped 25% in Los Angeles. The reports of domestic violence decreased 10% within the city, the Latino population. So this is happening. This is real.
I think I didn't see you in my statistics class in college, and you should have come because you would have known that's not a real one. Anyway, Jorge, thank you for joining us. I hope you'll come back. And congrats on the book.
Thanks.
Well, the left is declaring public figures to be non-persons over the slightest verbal infraction. This is happening in government. It's happening especially in the private sector and on campus. Yet some of the left has nothing bad to say about Louis Farrakhan. What's their thinking on that? That story coming up.